Here we are. If you are following the webinar from Europe or African time zones now, good afternoon. Good evening to those who are in Asia and the Pacific regions, and good morning if you are participating from the Americas. To all, warm welcome. Welcome to this virtual gathering, and thank you all for joining. This webinar, today's webinar is one within this webinar series on innovation for Sustainable Development Goals, a series of virtual events willing to provide some inspirational ideas and tools to tackle the many sustainability challenges of these times. This is organized by the multi-sectoral campuses of the University of Girona in their role as innovation sectoral hubs for the Girona region. Through this series of webinars, the University of Girona, collaborating with the Global University Network for Innovation, is joining many other socially responsible institutions around the world in the commitment to the SDGs, and in taking action to face the many current planetary emergencies, global warming, world pandemics, and many other socio-environmental injustices. Today's seminar is titled Moving Sustainability Forward, Regenerating Tourism as the Next Step. This is one of the last seminars in this series, and is co-hosted by two of these universities' innovation sectoral hubs, Campus Turisme, the Tourism Hub, and Campus Cohesio y Compromís Social, the Social Justice Hub. So when we think of tourism, travel, mobilities in the current era of late capitalism, we could say they are global phenomena like which, like a single coin, have necessarily two opposite sides. On the one hand, we are talking about, we all know, an economic industry that follows the logics of economic growth, surplus value, and capital accumulation. But on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, we are talking about a powerful and a valuable social mechanism to develop and to foster more just, more democratic, and more sustainable societies and environments. It seems that sustainable tourism keeps struggling to find its way while remaining between Scylla and Charybdis. So the advent of sustainable tourism comes from long ago, back in the 1990s. That was a first attempt to go over these two monsters, economic growth and socio-environmental injustice. Since then, academy and practice have abundantly dealt with the problem. And during these last 20, 30 years, they have, we've seen, adopted different ethical logics. Primarily, I would say, that of social responsibility for a while, and then later that of moral concern. It seems, though, that these approaches, even with their best intentions, they have kept reinforcing the commodification, the growing commodification of society, of culture, and of nature for tourism purposes. And more importantly, I would say, the depoliticization of travel. So returning to the coin metaphor, the coin of tourism, when flipped, always seems to fall on the same side, perpetuating forms of travel that either are unsustainable or, if not, put the focus on minimizing damage, the socio-environmental harm of their practices. Instead, regenerative travel, the topic of today's seminar, seems to go a step further. With regenerative tourism, there is an opportunity for tourism to actually contribute to the flourishing of host communities and visitors alike, and to develop and advance the Sustainable Development Goals. To understand regenerative tourism, I suggest that instead of asking what is regenerative tourism, we ask instead, how can tourism, travel, mobilities, how can it be and become regenerative? In other words, how can it become social and environmentally just, transformational, educational, restorative, and I would add affordable altogether and for both hosts and guests. Now, to this purpose, we are going to listen to 3 inspiring stories today. First, we have with us Bill Reed. Thanks, Bill, for being with us and having accepted our invitation to participate in the seminar. Welcome. Bill Reed is an international renowned specialist in the field of regeneration. He works in, sorry, because something went wrong here. Okay. Seems like, yeah.
You can skip the intro. You can skip the intro.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So no, Bill, as I say, he works as planning consultant, as a design process facilitator, as a lecturer, and also a researcher. He is pioneer of the conceptual shift from sustainability to regeneration. We'll learn more about that in this speech. His company, Regenesis, delivers services to improve the physical, social, spiritual quality of living places of all sorts. And in today's speech, Bill will take us through some relevant perspectives that constitutes the basis for the practice of regenerative development and design. So his conceptual contribution will surely set the stage to interpret with the lenses of regeneration and regenerative tourism the other 2 stories that come after his speech. Then we'll have with us Kana Chan. Kana Chan has been intensively involved in international and multicultural projects of many sorts around the world. Among them, Kana graduated in the Erasmus Mundus Master of Science, European Masters in Tourism Management here at the University of Girona some time ago. So Kana is passionate and she cares deeply about climate action, sustainable development and education since long ago. In her current project, Kana is a co-founder and director of INOW, INOW, an innovative educational tourism initiative based in Kamikatsu, the first zero-waste village in Japan. Through this initiative, Kana and her partners hope to further contribute to the preservation and regeneration of Kamikatsu's environment and culture, and along the way spread the values of regeneration worldwide. Thanks, Kana. Thanks for taking your time to be with us today. You can imagine it's a special pleasure for me to see you again after all this long time since we were collaborating together in a few projects in Girona. I can't remember. Welcome back. After Kana Chan's story, we will listen then to Maria Faura's speech. Maria has a degree in tourism management and technical studies in agriculture, livestock, and forestry management. He, for 17 years, worked in managerial positions at the Cadimo Xeró Natural Park. It's a beautiful protected area here in Catalonia, in the Pyrenees. Currently, she is the director of La Cerdanya DMO. In this destination management organization, she leads the efforts of the region to develop sustainable and regenerative tourism in this beautiful mountain and rural destination in the Catalan Pyrenees. Maria has led an all-inclusive participatory process in the region to develop a new strategic action plan for La Cerdanya with the purpose of regenerating the place as a sustainable tourism destination and integrating harmoniously and sustainably agriculture, forestry, and tourism activities. We will know more about this story later from Maria. And thank you then, Maria, as well, for accepting our invitation. You know, it's also a special pleasure for me to see that this webinar showcases this excellent work you are doing in La Cerdanya. Actually, we and our students of the EMTM program have been visiting La Cerdanya for years during a whole week every autumn as an academic activity that contributes to and enhances the collaboration between academia, policymakers, destination managers, and industry here in the Girona region. Thanks for all your support also in these collaborations, Maria. Well, so I have already taken time now to introduce the event and to introduce the speakers. So now the speeches will start in a minute. Just give me an additional minute to quickly share a few housekeeping information for the technical smooth running of the session. First, keep in mind that the session is being recorded and that once it finishes, the video will be uploaded in the website of this Innovation for SDGs webinar series. Second, make sure your name is written correctly in the e-platform. Third, be active in asking questions that the speeches may inspire in you, and please ask them in writing and in the Q&A section of the e-platform. The speakers will further elaborate from the questions after the speeches. And last, you may want to share about the event and your participation in it with others in the wider world through your social networks. We encourage you to do it, and thank you for that. Just ask you to please include the official hashtags which you can find and copy from the chat session of this platform if you wish. So that's it from my side. Please, Bill, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Jaume, let me share my screen and then I can walk and chew gum at the same time. All right, not quite there yet. All right, how's that for everybody? Good? Okay, well, it's nice to be with everybody from around the world. I see both hemispheres are represented, maybe even every continent, I'm not sure. And sorry, the dogs are going wild. This talk is a little unusual for me because I'm going to go fairly deep in terms of the core concept of regeneration. And it may seem a bit inscrutable to folks, but hang in there. I will give a couple of examples that will explain it. So to open this up, maybe many of you may have seen this diagram. The trajectory of ecological design, moving from conventional design, we build our buildings and projects one step better than breaking the law, to green, whether it's LEED or Green Star or any of the SDGs. These are actually limiting on the point of limiting the damage. 70% energy savings, let's say. If 70% energy savings is good, then 100% energy savings has to be sustainable. And as Herman Daly has said, perfection is impossible. And so there is no such thing as sustainable when we're working on simply making things more efficient. So that's a zero, it's basically almost an impossible task unless we reframe the way we look at the world and think about how do we actually restore the damage, restore the capacity of life to function on an evolutionary capacity. The restoration of life is different than the regeneration of life. And I think that that's really what a major distinction I want to make this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, the evening, wherever you are, is that restoration is not a synonym for regeneration. Regeneration actually means something somewhat deeper. Let me give you the definition of restoration, though. There's no such thing as restoring something to its original condition because evolution happens. Life is continually evolving and changing. So when we're talking about restoration, what we're talking about is restoring the self-organizing capability of an ecological subsystem to evolve. I know that's a mouthful, but basically we're taking a wetland or a forest system or a beach dune system, riparian corridor, and allowing and creating the conditions so that all those mechanisms of life, those reciprocal relationships of life, actually work together. Now that sounds great, and we should do that all over the place, except there's humans involved. And if we have a memory of about a decade in our culture, and 10 years later, let's say we decide I need a shopping center or a new building, and then we can say, well, we don't need all that wetland, we can just take some of it. And so what we do is we have a tendency to diminish or forget the nature of how life works. And regeneration is about a continual process of rebirth of our relationship with life. So how do we actually continually remember and re-engage? Because without that, we fall back to automatic. So there's a worldview shift that happens between restoration and regeneration. Another way to look at this is, hold on, I'm seeing some background. Another way to look at this are these paradigms, the four modern paradigms from Carol Sanford's work. We can look at where we are right now in our culture as extracting value, ripping stuff out of the earth, actually taking things from humans without any kind of return. That's the real negative side. Of course, we also exchange value, right? When we go to a movie, we give somebody money for the privilege of seeing that movie. So extracting value, receiving value, it's not necessarily negative, but if all we do is extract value and it's not reciprocal, we have a problem. Let's move forward into the green world and the sustainability world, and that might be called, and how I refer to this, as arresting disorder, slowing down the damage. Now, the interesting one is do good, the do good paradigm. And do good sounds good, except when it isn't. Colonialism might be saying that I'm going to take European living practices and go to Africa and tell the Africans how to live. Well, we know how that works out. And so do good can be actually quite bad if we are assuming that my good is what you need. I'll make sure that we okay. I see Jaume nodding. You're okay with that? So the nature of, we have to be very careful about doing good. And how do we do that? This means that we actually have to work on getting to know every living entity on its own terms. And this moves into the world of evolving capability. Let me shift to a definition of evolving capability to ground this, because this is what this talk is about this afternoon. So evolving capability, whether with people or life sheds, more than watersheds, life sheds, where all life happens, every living entity asks that we approach it individually to reveal and support its unique potential. So when working regeneratively, no standardized management practice supports this basic value. The SDGs are good, for instance, except when they're imposing a standard on a system or a life shed that does not ask for it, or asks for it in a different way. If I'm working in the desert southwest of the United States or working in Scandinavia, there's a whole different world of living systems that we need to pay attention to, and cultures to work with it on their own terms. So how do we reveal its unique potential? What does that mean? Oh, this isn't advancing just a minute. So regenerative development, and development does not mean building buildings. Development means, is a synonym for evolution, developing new potential, developing capability. Regenerative projects, businesses, and economies seek to develop the inherent potential in everyone and every living system they touch. This is how communities and cultures become regenerative. They build the capacity to become self-managing, self-investing, and self-evolving. So authentic culture, speaking of tourism, authentic culture emerges from this way of being. So it is a whole different way of approaching the world, not trying to solve problems, but actually being in relationship in a new way. So some simple examples, what does this concept inherent potential mean? Well, the famous photographer Sebastian Sagato's family farm, he was so burned out on photographing the tragedies of the world, he retired to his family farm. It was totally damaged and desiccated in the upper right-hand corner. You can see what now it has the potential to become. It was a forest, it become a forest again. But we need to understand what its potential is to allow it to express that. Certainly during COVID, we've seen what Beijing went from almost unlivable in terms of pollution to totally clear skies if we actually work with what nature wants to do, not what we impose upon it. This is a classic example. It was where I really learned this concept in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Vint Lawrence's ranch, he was going to restore the ranch, which made, in his mind, getting rid of the grazing animals and planting native species. Water is an incredibly valuable commodity, if you will, in the desert. It's a valuable commodity everywhere, but there was no water in memory, in 200 years of colonial power, white man's memory in this place. But yet they found out that beavers, which is, I think most of you know what beavers are. Beavers lived there, and beavers 200 years earlier, they actually found out that trappers trapped beavers in the desert. So there must have been water around there. And by understanding that pattern, they couldn't bring back the beavers to the desert, but what they could do is mimic the beavers' behavior. And they put up a 12-meter-high earthen check dams where beavers would logically have built their dams. And within 18 months, a permanent running stream appeared. Water in the desert. Now that's deep restoration, if you will, but what makes it regenerative is that all the farmers in the valley saw that and they learned from that and did the same thing. And now there's a raging frothy river, or stream anyway, where there was no water 10 years before. So regeneration it's not just a one-time event, it's a continual process of re-engagement. So I have a number of big type slides here that are kind of these big principles. One major principle is work with potential, not problems. Nature doesn't look backwards. Nature doesn't say, oh my goodness, we had if you can anthropomorphize nature, it's not wringing its hands and saying, oh, we got all these problems, a hurricane came through and destroyed us. All nature does is looks forward, and it always looks forward to express life. Life is, as I love Maturana's definition, life is the process of becoming, always developing, always moving forward. So potential, however, is grounded in essence. It's just not what you want to make up. It has to come from the innate source of who this place is, who an individual is. In indigenous ways of knowing, it is understood that each living being has a particular role to play. Every being is endowed with certain gifts, its own intelligence, its own spirit, its own story. Our stories tell us that the Creator gave these to us as original instructions. The foundation of education is to discover that gift within us and learn to use it well. And that, I maintain, is actually what regenerative tourism is about, is helping every living entity, whether the city or town you're visiting, about expressing its unique essence, and the visitors as well, learning to express their essence as well. So this little kid probably wants to be an airplane pilot. His essence is expressed. But if we actually forced him to become a dancer or a tennis player or whatever, if I would want my son to be like that, I would probably put him on the psychologist couch, or psychiatrist couch for years. So it's really important to understand the potential of every living individual, and cities and places as well. Pittsburgh, Barcelona, Park City, Utah, Seattle are all different places. What is their unique identity and unique potential? So another principle about this is that we need to work with wholes, not pieces. And we live in a reductionist culture. I'm sure we're pretty exposed to that nowadays, that we have reduced things to the smallest manageable component. And that is actually not how we understand life, because life works as self-organizing evolutionary entities. So if I want to get to know Jaume, let's say, I would not get to look at his liver and kidneys and skeletal structure and lungs, or if I grabbed all those pieces and put them in a pot and stirred them around, I don't get Home. I think we can acknowledge that, right? So what we get is a mess. And yet when we go to our cities and work in our cities, we grab mobility and gender equity and climate change and habitat connectivity. And we say, I'm going to put all these things together and somehow we've got a whole. That does not make a whole. The only way we get to know a whole is to know the entity on his or her or its own terms. And so to get to know Home, I need to know Home and how he relates to, and how I learned about Home is how the invisible connections between him and his colleagues, his cat, his spouse, parents, friends, those invisible connections and relationships tell me more about Home than any of the pieces. So what we're looking for are patterns of life that actually identify the nature, essence, and then potential of every living entity. So, okay, did that all hold together somewhat? I can see a few of you on the screen. Is that making a little sense? All right. So now to put, what does this mean in reality? So this is a project we worked on in the early 2000s. It's called Loretto Bay. And we were hired to look at how to make this the greatest sustainability resort, or the largest, which I'm not quite sure what that had to do with anything. But when we approach something, we look at the watershed as the smallest unit of engagement. And this, I think most people know, the Baja Peninsula is a desert, except that it wasn't before European settlers got here. It was a scrub oak forest, a dryland forest, and a deep estuarine system where exchanges happened. The estuaries are the seedbed for the Sea of Cortez. So what happened is when they introduced grazing animals and row crop agriculture, they actually, I won't explain the geological processes, but they actually reduced the water table by multiple meters and turned it into a desert. So the place has the potential to actually become a forest again, if we actually know how to work on it, with it on its own terms. So the essential pattern of life there was a membrane or exchange. And yet when through the grazing and all the erosion that happened, these gigantic estuaries were buried in sand and basically dead life. One of the things that was important to understand, though, is that the estuaries were, well, I'm going to go back here for a second. Also, what happened as a result of this study is that it took us about 6 months to figure out is that this place had a calling. It's a living entity. What is its vocation? Which sounds like a very strange thing to put to a place. But it took us about 6 months. It's remarkable how long it took to figure out that the vocation or its role was to regenerate the health of the Sea of Cortez. It seems so obvious. But the tourism, the farmers, the fishermen, because it's a big fishing area, the developers and residents all were here because of the health of the Sea of Cortez. And if the Sea of Cortez became dead, which it's actually coming pretty close to that now, there's no reason to be here. So everything needed to be focused on what can we do to heal the health of the Sea of Cortez. And that energized everybody in the community, developers, visitors, etc., and helped them begin to focus on what was truly important. As a result of that, the plan changed. So this was the original plan, which was a bunch of cement canals that mimicked an estuary, which is, when you think about it, pretty silly. So it was very expensive. And what we said, let's get rid of the cement, and why don't we turn it back into an estuary again? And that seemed obvious. So that was the plan. And in fact, the homes became more valuable because the covenants for each of these homes, they were actually required to take care of and tend the sweet, black, white, red mangrove trees that were part of this. And that actually, they became coveted sites. Now, the reason why these things sold is because this architect, Iri Cunliffe, was so enamored and inspired by the idea of working with the world on its own terms, that when they flew down 150 people on a Air Alaska flight to have these sales weekends, and they would bring Iri out for him to explain why this was so important to engage life in a new way, that humans could actually help life return, that 90% of the people bought primarily because of that new vision. They wanted a second home, but they bought because of the vision of working with the world the way it wants to work. However, the global financial collapse happened in 2008. It went bankrupt, and it went bankrupt total of 3 times. And yet, Loreto keeps still developing. And why is that? Because the homeowners actually became so inspired by that vision of working with that system the way it wanted to work, that, as it says here, what emerged, thanks in part to social media, was one of the most well-organized, powerful homeowner organizations in the world. And, So even, this is a 2013 article, Loreto is gradually becoming more and more sustainable, if you will, because they are regenerating their relationship with the original purpose that they moved there. So this begins to speak to regeneration. It's not what we do or design, it's how we build the capability of the people in a place to continually co-evolve with the system they're part of. That's the way we heal the world rapidly. We don't do it ourselves, building by building or project by project. We inspire more and more people to actually own their unique responsibility and their unique essence, and the potential that they have to participate in life on that place. So it's a big distinction. And what we're talking about is building a collaborative field around the potential of place. The typical development project works like this. I'll give you a community center if you give me permission to build, or I'll give you a school, or we'll build new roadways if you give us permission to build. That's a transactional relationship, and that is not reciprocal. Nature works with a riot of reciprocity, not quid pro quo. It's a continual gift economy from every living entity. So what we do when we go into a community or city, we work and help people to discover the potential for the unique way of life of that city and place. And the developer moves over now to become a co-equal participant, no more or less important. They become a stakeholder equal to every other stakeholder in that place, because the developer is as much interested in the quality of life at that place as anybody else. So everybody wins this way. And then it allows, so the stakeholders not just fighting against the development that they don't want to see, the developer is actually learning about how their development emerges from this new system. So we work with developers and with tourism groups. So I'm flipping back and forth between the two concepts. But what's interesting is that we also ask the community and require that the developer deserves a profit. They just don't deserve to build what they want to build. And most everybody, 99% of the people in the world say, yeah, of course the developer deserves a profit if they build here, but they don't deserve to tell us what they don't deserve to tell us what to do. So how do we work together and then support that developer so that the community wins, everybody in the community wins? All right, another project, Playa Viva, and this by many is considered the kind of grandfather of regenerative tourism. This was in 2006. And David Leventhal and Sandra Kahn, the couple bought land at a very low cost because the palm oil plantations, these monocultures, were meant to provide a lucrative income for Mexico. And of course, they planted everything with palm oil, collapsed the market, and everybody went broke. So this village, Hulichuca, is a struggling village. It used to be a 10,000 person Aztec tributary community, hundreds of years ago, hundreds of years ago. And now it is a 500 person little dot on the road that you really don't want to stop at necessarily. So when we went there, we discovered a village that was so-so, just a nice little place, but struggling, obviously, people losing teenagers, that kind of thing, to the big city. The hill that David wanted to build his casitas on turned out to be an Aztec pyramid. So that was a non-starter. And it became definitely a problem from his perspective. But what really happened most profoundly in the first 2 days that we were there is we actually had a rich interview with the elders of the community. And David fell in love with the richness and knowledge and wisdom that these elders conveyed. And that made this big switch, because before he was going to helicopter in a zero energy resort that basically had employees from the local village, and that was the gift to the community. And he said, nope, we are not separate from the community. We are the community. We are the village. And that is a fundamental paradigm shift. And as a result, this place, while of course it has the amenities of a resort, also the village is integral to this community. In fact, the president of Guerrero, the state where Huluchuca is, wanted to give David an exit off the highway, a special exit. And David said, nope, everybody comes through the village to come to our resort. And the village is not a grand entrance at all. So one of the things that happens in this work is that, and this, I want you to take two things away from this talk today, if anything. I want you to take the idea of working with the essence and potential of every living entity. And the other is that we can harmonize all conflict. Now, I'm making a bold statement here, but we've never seen this fail. Nature, so here's how we typically work in our culture. We live in dualism. We have an activating force and a restraining force. So we have different political parties in the United States. We have Republicans and we have Democrats, and we fight. And somehow compromise is considered the height of political sophistication. Compromise it's not the best word in Spanish, but it means to lose. I give up a little, you give up a little. And nature doesn't work that way. If that was the case, we wouldn't have any life on the planet. So compromise is actually a word that we ought to excise out of our language, because you compromise and then you compromise again and then you compromise again, and we drive ourselves right into the ground. Nature harmonizes, it reconciles. The willow tree does not argue with the oak tree about how many nutrients to exchange. It's a continuous dance of reciprocity. So how do we harmonize things? And that is, it's a kind of a quantum issue, but nature doesn't it always organizes around potential. If we can look forward, we can harmonize. If we're trying to solve past problems, we don't. And trying to solve problems is like driving a car and looking in the rear view mirror. You end up in accidents all the time. So looking forward allows us to see new ideas. So let me give you an example about this. So David moved all the casitas down to the beach dune system. And we said, we're going to have to quit this project because that is not the way nature works. We will destroy these beach dune systems if we build here. So we said to him, we were going to have to quit the project because we can't be part of that. And he said, Bill, you said you could harmonize anything. So I'm going to hold you to that. So we sat down and at a long meeting, and within 3 hours, we solved the problem. And it turned out that we designed an experiment to create tree houses with the palm trees. And palm trees are grasses. They actually transplant pretty easily. And we developed to experiment with lashing systems and with structural analysis, backwoods structural analysis. So we end up with living tree houses that actually are a much better solution for this environment and created even a more desirable resort. So you see the force of these two forces actually became harmonized. Not only that, the turtle poachers, this is a turtle sanctuary area, but the turtles are being decimated by poachers. These are the former poachers Now they are the protectors of the turtles, and they make more money by protecting the turtles than poaching them. So issue after issue, the restoration of the fisheries and the estuary, the visitors are working with educating and helping the community, as well as learning new biodynamic farming techniques. And as a result of this, the village is thriving. In fact, I love this point that David makes. Playa Viva is not a hotel, it is a project. It's an ongoing engagement with the community, and that's its richness. And the best metric, I love this, is the young adults are moving back and the teenagers are staying. So the village is actually thriving again. And to me, that is an indication of regeneration at the highest level in terms of social or cultural systems. So the end result of regeneration is developing the capacity, the deliverable, if you will, is not a building, it's not a thing, although those buildings emerge, the project designs emerge from this new understanding of place, but it's developing the capacity and capability of the people in that place to co-evolve with their environment, to heal their environment forever. So this is an ongoing practice. I like to say life is a practice, it's not a deliverable. And this is why tourism is such a great opportunity, because tourism is meant to, you want to protect the uniqueness of the places you are inviting others to share, right? But the only way to do that is to invite the people to understand the nature of this place and to work with it on its own terms, not imposing an idea from the outside. So I like this question that Anna Pollock answers. How do we create and sustain a visitor economy that tangibly enables resident individuals, businesses, and communities to thrive, flourish, and be healthy in every way? And the way we do that is we identify those leverage points that energize people in the service of their place. We don't make people do different things. If somebody's interested in focused on habitat connectivity, and somebody's interested in mobility, and somebody is interested in fair wages, good, that's what they need to be working on. But what we're doing is we're helping them gather together to work in the service of that vocation, that calling, that nature of place. And that's how we get massive change on the planet, folks. Again, not doing it one by one, but by launching the energy of people to do what their own essence asks of them. So I'm not going to, these slides will be available to folks. I'm not going to spend the time going over every question here. But the thing is don't think you know everything. Ask more questions, listen to each other, work from potential, not problems, and co-discover the essence of people and place. And if we even hold these the 5 capitals from the Forum for the Future, nature, social, infrastructure, human, financial, and the SDGs will emerge from all this. Don't try to solve for the SDGs, but if we are actually solving for these broad arenas, you will get all 17 SDGs, because what happens is you can't get them all at once. But if you're engaged with people over time, you will automatically get all 17, by the way. So massive transformation is possible. I like to tell architects and developers, your project is not the project in regenerative work. Your project is the system that you're part of. And I was going to share this example, but I think I'm going to stop here. So regenerating our relationship with life is a continual process. Our children will need this taught to them. We need to be reminded of it every year. We go right back on automatic, right? Continually go on automatic. How do we rebirth our own energy and our own focus as things change around us? Regeneration is a continual cycle of rebirth. That's how we sustain the planet. And the simple thing is you cannot have a sustainable planet without regeneration. It doesn't work that way, because what we're sustaining is life. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Thank you so much for this inspirational talk. I think you touched upon two very key questions to move the debate on sustainability further into this sort of our next step that the title of the conference is about. So let me ask you a few of the questions that the audience has left here in the Q&A site for you. Claudia Riera, our colleague from the campus, says which are actually the main obstacles when facing the implementation of these regenerative projects. Yeah, you need the voice.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, good question. The main obstacles are people's people want to be in charge. They think that most people think that we can command and control life. And the hardest obstacle is slowing down and collaboratively learning. You know that there's an expression in the States anyway called ready, fire, aim. So taking the time to aim properly, to understand the context that we're working in, and to understand that essence of place is the hardest part, because none of us are in charge and none of us are in control, even though we think we are. So actually breaking down that barrier of thinking that we know better is probably the hardest part. There's lots more, but that's the main one.
Yeah, that's related to another question, which is what happens when the communication, the community or the destination is not cooperative and is not able to do, as we know, many cases. So we ask whether you have been involved in cases like this, and actually whether there is anything to do, or maybe just as you say, just wait until the changes are self-produced in the system. I'm just speculating now.
Yeah. Look, this is really an important question. Yes, we've had, well, I will say that we have never had a failure with a project if we can get the client to understand that they're not in charge. If the client assumes that we are opening up most people are afraid, oh no, we can't have the community talk to us because they may want different things than we want, right? And so we can't let that happen. Well, that's the case. You don't have a good project. However, if you have the discipline of the community and the client for long-term staying power, we have never seen this fail. But it takes, I said earlier, life is a practice. It takes about a year for people to really start looking at each other. So for instance, we work with the community and we help people see the potential of their community, the place, the ecosystem, the social system. And people get very excited about that. They actually fall in love with life again and fall in love with their home again. That's the beginning. And then it takes, what we do is we say to our clients, it takes a year to 3 years before people really understand this. So we meet every 4 to 6 weeks with a core group from the community who are interested. Not everybody's interested, just the people who are. And if you get 10 to 50 people meeting for every 6 weeks for about a year, 10 months to a year, that's when the dam starts breaking open. And people will say, I didn't know, and they're working together, but trying to understand what this work is about. And they start talking to each other in a new way. It's, I didn't know you were working on that. We're kind of working on that too. Maybe we ought to work together. So we are all in silos in our life, right? We all have specialties. And it's one of the most difficult things is breaking out of that specialist zone and then getting people to actually start respecting one another. Then things open up. We had a guy in one of our projects, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, who did not want to talk with a couple of gringos from the States, and was down in Chile. And he called up our client. He said, Ricardo, I don't know what you guys are doing, but count us in. This is the first time the city's been able to dream in 30 years. And the reason that happened is because there was a group of people building a field of energy, if you will, that was an attractor, just like a party. A good party is an attractor to many people. When you get coherency and people focused on positive engagement with the community going forward, it begins to attract others. So this is a human psychology thing. And as long as you can get that traction, and it requires you to hold to that North Star, despite people saying, "Oh, this will never work." You know, it requires patience. Okay, a way too long an answer, but I hope that helped.
Yeah, yeah. You are pointing to, I think, a very interesting, another interesting aspect, which is the time needed for transformations, and maybe this this is a central issue in you know, like finding difficulties for effective change. But I think the message is that it's a matter also of I don't know, patience, perseverance, and patience in the sense that these processes cannot be sort of fabricated or forced, like the birth of an elephant type of thing. So related to this, I see this Isabel Bagudang question, which in a way I think relates to this, because it says that when you were talking about restoration, this is such a beautiful word, but in most cases are just rehabilitation or just mere gardening actions in nature. Regeneration, as you have said, is much more promising. But don't you think that taking into consideration the short lifespan of human, people may not be patient enough to embrace it? I think it just links with what I mentioned before.
Yeah, well, but it's faster than you think. When we would, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the permaculture world and the work of that. When we work with permaculture practices, we see at holistic management, we see nature turn around in 18 months. We saw how fast Beijing's air cleared, or the canals in Venice cleared during the COVID, right? We can see benefit very quickly. Social change happens in about 18 months too. So I think it's not immediate, but it's not that long. And also, if we honor and respect the life that we want our children to have, I think we're going to hold on to that anyway. So a woman a Jewish woman heard one of my talks, and she said, she's a Hebrew calligrapher, and she said, well, you know what 18 is in Hebrew? I said, well, no, I don't. He said, well, chai, which means life. So I don't know what you're going to do with that. You can put that in your pipe and smoke it, but 18, we see 18 months as being this magic number of transformation. So hold on. But this is another reason why regenerative tourism is so important. It requires, and it wants to engage over the long term.
Yeah. And maybe if you allow me, I would add also that if one person like frames everything through their lifespan, in a way is putting herself to the very center, and this is a very anthropocentric or whatever perspective, which in a way, I guess, it's also needed for big transformations. Let's move into these other questions. This is also from my colleague Josep Calvo. He says, thank you for the talk, Bill. Like so much your potential instead of problems approach. I also like your approach of working with the whole. But isn't it difficult in some instances to set the limits of the whole? And I will take advantage of a question that I just wrote myself when I also was following your concepts of wholes and your concepts, I would add also of essences. And here, I mean, I felt comfortable when I listened to your whole speech, because then I could understand in the way you use essences and the way you use wholes. But this concept may be problematic for people who just take for granted that essences means fixed essences, identities, and platonic souls, if you want, and wholes mean also totalities in the Hegelian way of the word, if you want. And I think this is very problematic because other philosophers have used these same concepts, meaning just totally the opposite. Like, for example, the case of Gilles Deleuze, where essences are self-evolving essences and never fixed identities, but becoming type of thing. So I think this links also with a question that, and I wanted to ask this anyway, so you can go through it all together.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, I don't want to get into Hegelian philosophy because that actually is a little bit of a diversion. I'd love to share that with you sometime, but I will talk about, this is a great question. It's an important question. In fact, I had a slide in here to address just that, but didn't know how long this was going to take. So let's talk about a whole. What we need to understand, Jan Smuts' work, the prime minister in South Africa, was also one of the great ecologists in the world. And he developed the concept of holons in holarchy. Holons are nested holes. I actually am evolving and I create new, I can create new human beings. So the next hole is my family. The next hole is my neighborhood. The next hole is the community. The next hole is the watershed. So, and it works also with sites, your site, your neighborhood, your city, nation, right? The nested holes. Now, the way we work with holes, every hole has a unique essence, but more importantly, every hole needs to add value to the next hole. That hole adds value to the next hole. If we are not conscious of how we are adding value, the unique way we are adding value to the larger hole we are nested in, then life collapses. And conversely, the larger hole adds value to the smaller hole. You following me? So if I am a jerk and my family is going to break apart, so I have to be conscious of the value that I'm adding to my family. And my family, of course, has to in some way be conscious of how they're actually supporting me, right? So it's reciprocal relationship. And the same way in a place, that example of in Loreto Bay, its value was to be a contributor to the health of the Sea of Cortez. And the Sea of Cortez then contributed value to the vacationers and the fishermen in that place. So, but if I'm not conscious of the value that I need to add, then I'll destroy it or be ignorant of possible damage. Is that helpful, Jaume?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you say, this is a very deep issue for debate because it touches upon, you know, like very fundamentals of thinking, even, you know, the way of we humans think, and that's maybe related to this other question, because the word thinking comes in it, and it says, do you think that now the current pandemic situation could help to move faster on regenerative thinking? And also thanks you for the talk, but I think this concept of regenerative thinking, if we link it to what we are talking about, like developing a different way of thinking, a different way of understanding essences, wholes, and so on, can be maybe a beginning of something yet to come.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has allowed people to breathe a little bit and recalibrate. Not everybody, because so many people want to go back to the way life was, but many people are realizing we can't go back to the way life was. And that's an important realization. I don't know how long we'll hold on to it. So yes, this is a real opportunity. And by the way, rethinking is really important. You know, the root of regeneration is, I'm going to go a little, this will sound a little strange, but this is a story that I've heard. Regeneration was used by the Church of England 400 years ago as another word for repentance. Mm-hmm. Now, repentance, this is, bear with me here, I'm not going religious on you, but I do want to be conscious. Repentance is, does not mean not to stop sinning, although maybe it does, but it really means to rethink, repenser, right? Repenser. So to remind. So regeneration is about reframing our thinking over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I would only add that this is like the repetition and difference, the Deleuzian concepts, where, or their eternal return, where return, you only can return to difference. And the only thing that there is difference. And I think this is a nuance, if you want, but I think it's a key nuance, because most people, we are indoctrinated into systems of repentance, as you say, where repentance means going back to the norm. And I would say that your concept of regeneration, it's open to potential and to the unknown, and here is where the same text in a way can have different interpretations, and depending on the glasses, you know, that the reader is using.
That's really well said, Jaume. Thank you for that. That's good.
Okay, thank you. So, well, we don't have much time, I guess. We still have a couple of questions here. So maybe if you can go fast through it, then that means we will close the questions to your speech, and then we will move to Kana Chan's second speech of the day. This last question says, what's the relationship between the regeneration and concept of regeneration and sustainability? Would you say regenerative is a concept, an approach, a new paradigm, and the generative development is mostly seen used in the nature environment, with the emphasis in environmental regeneration? How about the urban settings, such as urban tourism development and so on? And
really important question. So I'll try to be quick. Regeneration, you cannot have sustainability without regeneration. We're sustaining life. We aren't sustaining things. So we have to actually understand we're working with life. And then I'm not sure if I'm looking at the same question now. I also see about the urban setting. Is that the one you're looking at?
that one, yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, and by the way, Jane Jacobs, if you've ever read Death and Life in Great American Cities, classic book, talks about regeneration. The idea is that you're regenerating the spirit of community. The humans are nature. So her classic example of an essence pattern in Manhattan, New York City, was eyes on the street. That the pattern of in neighborhoods that were actually successful in Manhattan had the neighborhood residents being able to see the street so they could see if there was trouble or not. And the minute you took away that opportunity for eyes on the street, the neighborhood collapsed. So that social quality in the neighborhood needs to be continually regenerated, right? We need to be conscious of it. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about nature in quotation marks, because we are nature too. It's just how it's a social ecological construct, and regeneration applies in all cases.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Thank you so much. I think we exhausted the time. We have a question by Ali Aratli. I will keep it here, and it will come back at the end in the open Q&A. So please, Kana, all the floor is yours. We are ready to listen to your story. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Bill Reed, and thank you, Jaume and Anna and the team at UDG for having me here and allowing me to speak about Kamikatsu, the village I'm currently in, and the program INOW, which I run in Kamikatsu. So I'm going to start with a quick 1-minute video, so please sit back and enjoy, and yeah, hopefully you feel taken to Kamikatsu in this video. The concept of INOW is simple. Come experience Kamikatsu as a local. INOW is your home in Kamikatsu.
The INOW program is a homestay program with the idea that we're not just inviting people to come to Kamikatsu as tourists, but to actually experience what life is like for a local resident.
By living side by side with locals for an extended period of time, we hope you'll be inspired to think about sustainability in a different way.
We wanted to have a space where you can come and experience a new perspective, learn from people who are not doing sustainability in order to say that they're sustainable, but they're living a life where they're making themselves happy through the choices that they have. And we want people to be able to have an opportunity to just come and see what they're capable of.
The purpose of the INOW program is to encourage participants to reflect and explore, and through experience, rethink zero waste and sustainability. Okay, so that was Kamikatsu. Just to give you an overview of what we do, there is a long version of that video where we actually interview some of the locals and the people who participate in the program as teachers. So if you wanted to check that out, it's about 6 minutes. So just an overview about Kamikatsu, where we're located, and then I'll go into the program. We are located on Shikoku Island, which is in the southwest part of Japan. We are the smallest village in Shikoku Island, with a population of about 1,500 people as of March, or this month. We do have a high rate of elderly population over 65, which is about 50%. And we are facing depopulation and an aging population, which is quite common and reflective of a lot of rural Japan. We are known as one of the most beautiful villages in Japan, and hopefully you got a sense of our place through the video. That is one of the biggest draws of Kamikatsu, as well as the nature. But beyond the nature, we're actually known for what's called zero waste, and so I'll explain that next. We're the first village to declare for zero waste. And what that means is that we aim to recycle all of the garbage produced within the village. And this is just an initiative within the village. And so a short history is that prior to 1997, all the garbage was being dumped in a hole. There was literally a hole in the ground where people brought their trash and threw it in, and it was being burned. Then we moved to incinerations, and with the incineration, it was a better alternative because it was being burned for energy. But what was harmful as a consequence was the dioxin that was produced from the incineration. And so that was stopped. And then we moved to recycling. And it started out with 9 categories, moved to 22 categories, then to 35 categories. And now we actually separate into 45 different categories of waste. And in 2003, we declared for zero waste, with the goal to recycle 100% of the garbage produced. And right now, today, as I mentioned, there are 45 categories. There's no municipal garbage truck that collects residents' waste in Kamikatsu. Instead, we compost all our organic matter, and we bring our own garbage to the garbage separation center, which is located in a central part of the village. And we separate our own garbage, and only a small amount that is left over is incinerated. Just to give you a figure, in 2019, about 80% of the village's waste was recycled, and compared that to the national average in Japan, which was just about 20% of recycling. And of course, we don't use all 45 categories on a regular basis. Most of it is for plastics or for bottles. And the remaining 20% that we aren't able to recycle is usually like hygienic products like diapers, and so those are incinerated. Okay, and of course, zero waste in Kamikatsu comes with its challenges and opportunities. I think sometimes we're painted as a best case scenario for sustainability, but that's far from the reality. I think there are many people who are still reluctant to cooperate with recycling, and sometimes it's difficult for the elderly, and there's a lack of innovation. This was started in 2003, and we're still focusing mainly on recycling. But there are opportunities. We have saved our costs. About a third of the costs have been saved by switching from incineration to recycling. And I think it's really helped me and helped a lot of people in this village to rethink our relationship with the materials and the waste we create. And zero waste is a community effort and has been a community effort, in spite of those who still are a bit reluctant to cooperate. And I think with the help of new minds and new ideas, we're able to help really create a better future that we try to achieve together. And then moving into the program, which is pronounced INOW. INOW is actually a local word for come home or return home. And of course, Kamikatsu, being known for the first zero waste village in Japan, attracts a lot of global and international attention. And so we do have a lot of people who want to come visit, but they can only visit as a tourist, and it's hard to understand how zero waste is really implemented in the village. And so we exist to provide an opportunity for people to come experience zero waste firsthand and have those connections within the community. Yes, so INOW means let's go home in the local dialect. And we exist to help participants explore, reflect, and through experience, learn about zero waste and sustainability. We really invite our guests to live side by side with local people and provide them a chance to immerse deeply into the village's lifestyle for an extended period of time. We like to think of ourselves as transformative travel, which is also the title of this talk, because we do want to help people stretch and learn and grow into new ways of thinking and being and engaging with the world. Travel by default isn't transformative, and the act of just being from one place to another place doesn't change your way of thinking, and certainly doesn't necessarily translate into changed action. But when we experience something new and we're able to apply meaning to what we've learned, then we see the transformation take place in the people who come to our program. So we exist to build a community of conscious thinkers and act as a bridge between Kamikatsu and the world. And we really do see ourselves as a bridge, as a connector between people and ideas, and hopefully in that creating a sustainable future for Kamikatsu. Yes, so our program is consisting of a 10-day program, and we do various activities. We talk with local artists, and we make art with the local artists. We help farmers with their farm. We take walks in nature and visit different parts of the town. And we also, in providing help through farmers or in creating art with artists, we see this as a participatory way to engage with local people. And part of the value of our program is the people we connect the participants with. We really do focus on self-awareness and discovery, and I think as unique as Kamikatsu is as a place, the uniqueness also comes from the philosophies that our teachers are able to provide. And we really do try to facilitate genuine interactions between people in the community and create deeper, deeper conversations and deeper ideas. One of the things we do also want to share is a zero waste mindset, and we try to encourage participants to rethink their idea about waste and what they produce. And we like to ask people to think about the effort or the balance between time, effort, money, and waste. And so when you live in Kamikatsu, you don't learn just about waste, but you also consider the balance between the other factors. Ultimately, we exist to provide a space for people to be mindful. And we don't try to create a standard program for everyone. We focus on things like co-creation and co-learning. And we really believe that the transformation happens when we explore ourselves while exploring the world around us. And so we encourage our participants to experience a local culture by participating actively. And I put a question mark next to regenerative, and maybe Bill and others can give their input. I'm only recently hearing the term regenerative, and so I am still new to understanding this as a concept. But I do think that we think a lot about the impact we create in the community, and something that stood out to me is the idea of continuously co-evolving, and we do aim to protect the uniqueness of Kamikatsu, the uniqueness of place. We do think about co-creation and co-learning, which I mentioned before, and really started because of our love for Kamikatsu and how we wanted to share that with the world, and a desire for people to understand the philosophies of our teachers, the philosophy of local people, the wisdom. And we realized that there's a lot that people can offer to Kamikatsu. And so we see our program as co-creative in the sense that people can contribute to the development of Kamikatsu, and we really aim to build a place that people want to return home to. And so that's my presentation. I think it was a bit shorter than expected. Yeah, it was 12 minutes. Okay, but if anyone had any questions.
Okay, yeah. So we have a question of our beloved Birte Menke. How have existing tourism operators in Kamikatsu been working before? How are you engaging with them through INOW to further drive transformation?
Yeah, so there are existing tourism operators in Kamikatsu. All of them are in Japanese. And so we exist as the first bilingual program in both English and Japanese. And so the other tourism operators provide educational tours that are more catered to short-term or families. And so you do have that more short-term transient experience and less focus on the immersion into the local community. But I think that they exist for a certain purpose and for a certain type of tourist and group. And so we do collaborate, and if someone doesn't fit for our program, we certainly encourage them to see the other options in Kamikatsu.
Okay, thank you. Maybe here we have another question. Do you have a project from which you found inspiration before?
Project? Not entirely. I personally find inspiration from a place called Fogo Island in Newfoundland in Canada, and their focus on really preserving place and the idea of place. But we didn't create that because of my inspiration from Fogo Island. And we created because we really saw this gap where there was a lot of people who wanted to experience Kamikatsu but couldn't because of the barriers. And so that's where that started.
Okay. Good. And Birte, continue asking, do you work with any specific SDGs in mind, or are you using zero waste as a way into broader sustainability transformation?
Actually, no. Kamikatsu as a town does focus on some SDGs, and I'm not specifically sure which ones, but INOW as a program doesn't focus on a specific SDG. And zero waste, yeah, as I mentioned before, is kind of like a framework or a mindset that we think about. And so that broadly connects to sustainability or sustainable transformation. And I think zero waste is only one aspect of sustainability, or at least that's how we see it. And so it's not, yeah, it's like kind of a tool that supports sustainability. But no, so to the earlier question, we don't have a specific SDG.
All right. And then another one says, do you know how big is the gap between gross and net recycling?
I don't have that figure. I don't have that figure.
You'll figure it out and send it to us next week. Type
Okay.
of.
Sounds good. I'll go throw out my garbage and ask somebody there.
And then we have Shima here. Happy New Year, Shima, in Iran. Congratulations for your effort. My question is if you plan to be connected with the visitors and see the effect of their trip after their stay to see the transformations in their everyday lives.
That's a great question. Actually, yes, we have kind of like an online community where people who have participated in the program stay connected. And actually, that's where I think the transformation happens, is after they leave, not necessarily before. And I think in small ways you see transformation during their trip, because it is almost 2 weeks. We do see a lot of growth, or a lot of different ideas emerge. But it comes afterwards. And so we had somebody who had inspiration from their time here, and 6 months later kind of realized what they wanted to do with their lives, and attributed a lot of that to the space they were given when they were here. Okay, and then Ali says, does your project's mission applied in another Japanese village? And if there are any other projects, how they serve sustainability? That's a good question. Our mission, I suppose, is specific to us, but there are many cases of other, especially rural places, who are doing efforts to kind of trying to revitalize their town or their village, and their own sustainability efforts. I think something that is really prominent in the rural areas is depopulation, and so a lot of projects to help sustain the town is really important. And so there are other projects. Yeah, right. I can give some names to Ali later. But even if I name them now, I don't think they have much meaning.
That's great. And Maria Jimpaki, hi Maria. How do you kind of raise awareness in the local community about the zero waste lifestyle? Yeah, that's interesting. I think Maria, you're talking about raise awareness within Kamikatsu. Yeah, because he said within. Yeah, so zero waste is essentially meaning zero garbage in Japanese, and so reducing the waste to zero. But that doesn't necessarily translate to like zero waste lifestyle. But I think businesses and individuals are doing what they can to raise awareness. For example, most of the cafes offer bulk sales, and so ways to reduce plastic. And I think there's a lot of initiatives that are coming from businesses to reduce waste. And so zero waste as a lifestyle is a bit different than zero waste initiatives of the town, which is to reduce garbage, or to recycle garbage. In terms of raising awareness specifically, yeah, I think it's individual and business efforts. Okay, yeah. Okay, let me ask a question, which I'm interested in. So from your experience, and a little bit linking it to the previous speech about regeneration and another and transformation, which is one of your words that you have used it centrally in your presentations as well. So like it seems that in this type of experiences, let's call it experiences, like focus is put, an emphasis is put into the transformation of the visitor. That's quite clear, and I would say there's no doubt about that. Then maybe in a second stage, it's one can deduce that obviously it's also about transformation of the local communities. But this is not so clear, if you know what I mean. Sometimes it looks to me, and this is just an observation, and that's it, that transformational travel is about, maybe I'm too strong now, but about people that in a way may be moralistic, but in the end is still individualistic, go somewhere, gets transformed, very much appreciate whatever, but let's put it in hard words, never return back sort of thing. So you have been transformed, but actually you have not transformed anything. So then you introduce the co-creation. I think this slide, I like it a lot, because this would force the situation to put the two actors, the communities, the hosts and the visitors, in a position of necessary co-transformation. For me, this is some sort of the ideal that I would like to see, because this is what actually can also take sometimes communities, even indigenous communities, to also move away from their fixity, which I guess that sometimes is too much romanticized and this type of thing. So well, from your experience, the idea is, how do you think that we can somehow start to move from, let's say, individual transformations to co-transformation? Let's call it like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it really does start out as like an individual transformation, and people come obviously with their own like reasons for coming. And I think once they see what Kamikatsu can offer in terms of how the philosophies of the people have helped them, I feel like they feel a sense of wanting to give back, and then that goes into the kind of co-creation process. And I think because of the way we allow people and invite people to offer something that they have, that they can contribute, they are inclined to do so. And I think that something that we've seen is that people want to give back, and people want to help and want to support, and finding what that is part of the purpose of the program too. And because they're able to give back, or because they're searching for something to give back, we build a community that's not just physically in Kamikatsu, but much broader. And then I think we see the ripple effects of that afterwards, after they leave, or after, and sometimes they do come back. We have had guests who come back as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think it's important, and we have a question which in a way is related to this, because in a way emphasizes the fact that in Bill's presentation, and also I think I mentioned that in the beginning, the two axes of like limiting damage or actually creating good type of thing. So it seems that zero waste would be more on the other side, the axis of reducing damage, that more than the other one. So yeah, the project goes beyond that, which in a way you have explained a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to be very honest, like we're still very new, and so we see our program as kind of an experiment, and I think that we are looking for more ways to, do more good than harm, and not just maintain the balance, but do more to contribute to the preservation and restoration, or revitalization of Kamikatsu. And I agree that zero waste isn't enough for sustainability, but hopefully in this process of co-creation, we are able to continuously co-evolve and do more good, and do better to preserve the environment and the culture of Kamikatsu.
Okay, wonderful. And then the last question, and then we will pass on to Maria. Ali Ratli asks if you also work with children so that they can learn and can get like acquainted and used to these sustainable practices from very early on in their lives.
And that's something right now we work with people who come mostly as solo travelers, but I hope that we can expand our programs to including family and children about zero waste, because I think that's a good point. It's important to educate children about sustainability efforts. In school, if you were talking about children in schools within Kamikatsu, they learn about zero waste in school. So they have the opportunity to go to the garbage separation center when they're in elementary school and middle school and learn about that. And I think you also asked about approaches to tourism during COVID pandemic.
Yeah, this was a general one made before that maybe we can raise at the end.
Okay.
So I will address that to the three panels, if that's fine. Yeah, but then I take an extra minute just because I figure out that this is a 1,500 residents place, rural, and one of the few, I guess, because Japan must be very urban, I guess, and so on. So one would think about terms, if you want, well, of carrying capacity, if you want to use that term, or the danger of over-tourism, if you want to use another term, or let's put it in mundane words, how many visitors co-participating and or getting co-involved, let's call it like that, would be an adequate or a reasonable figure for the effectiveness of the regenerational and the sustainable and all these adjectives not being just green type of washing?
That's a difficult question. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer because I don't think the number.
No, obviously. Yeah. I mean, it's more a rhetorical question in the sense that it's not about the number, but it's about that actually, if we don't take into account this type of things, then what I said before, the coin, when you flip it, always goes to growth and growth and growth and accumulation and surplus value, much beyond the other, or together with the other, but in the end, yeah, I mean, it's something to always keep in mind, I guess. Yeah, okay. A pleasure, Kana. Thank you so much for all your presentation and the answers to the questions. And now, Maria, if you are ready, so we are here also ready to listen to your story.
Hello, how are you? As Jaume has introduced me, I am Maria from Turisme Cerdanya. I have to share screen 1 minute. Okay, I am here to explain our participatory process to develop the strategic action plan in La Cerdanya region. I begin with a brief introduction to the territory. The territory Cerdanya, it's a very special territory. We have a big valley, the biggest valley of the Pyrenees, that it's oriented from east to west, and is surrounded by mountain ranges, one to the north and the other to the south. That makes a very spectacular and attractive landscape. More things about La Cerdanya is we have dividing lines because before the Treaty of the Pyrenees, La Cerdanya was twice as large as today. Nowadays we have the Upper Cerdanya, it's the blue part, which belongs to France nowadays, and the Lower Cerdanya, which belongs to a Spanish state, but also the Spanish Cerdanya is divided between the province of Lleida, it's the yellow part, and the orange part belongs to Girona. I explain that because fortunately the dividing lines on paper also unit as with the surrounding territories with which we maintain a good relationship, but the administration have some problems for that. And another particularity from Cerdanya, like neighboring areas of the Pyrenees, it depends a lot on tourism to support the economy, and the areas of the economy also depends of the tourism. 3/4 of the gross value added belongs to service and mostly are related to tourism. And also I want to talk a little bit for the tourism. We depend of the County Council of La Cerdanya. We are very active and multidisciplinary because we are few workers and we have to do everything. We have a tourist office very well located to inform the tourists that arrive in La Cerdanya, and also we have a lot of projects, some of them shared with other territories that I speak before. We have one project that it's related to nature, culture, and networked intelligence with the other counties of Girona. We want to create a network of accessible ways, also to make the cultural and natural heritage more accessible, and managed model. In the part of Lleida, we have a similar project also with a path network, and also we have a part with the coordination of the different administrations. And the last one that I want to talk, it's about the POCTEFA Pyramid. It's called Pyrenean Experience, Mediterranean Emotions. It's a cross-border collaboration between France and Catalonia, and we have actions to create new products, tourist products that are across borders, and to develop joint marketing and promotion on a national and international scale. All of that I explained to introduce we need we want to work with a lot of entities, and the local entities have to participate in the tourism management. And for that, in the last 2 years, we have introduced a participatory process to improve this tourism management. I have to talk about Resilience Earth. Resilience Earth is the corporation that has accompanied us throughout this process. They are a non-profit cooperative that is committed to community resilience, regenerative design, and social and solidarity economy as fundamental tools for social, ecological, and economic transformation. We are very, very grateful to have worked with them in this participatory process, because thanks to them, we have achieved a comprehensive regenerative change to create a new model of tourism here in La Cerdanya. The first campaign, it's called Quin Trinxat vols? In English, it's What Trinxat do you want? The trinxat is a typical traditional dish from Cerdanya that it's made with potatoes and with the winter cabbage. With this campaign, we want to motivate everyone to participate in deciding which kind of tourism model we desire for Cerdanya. We have the first workshop that we made is we presented all the project, the participative project, and we use dynamic groups techniques to reach decisions always through the consensus. The second workshop, we validate the purpose of the previous session and worked on the different strategic lines and specific objective of the new tourism model. And the third one, we validate the strategic lines. We also always validate the past workshop and agreed on a new model of participatory governance. With this campaign, the 3 working days, we have a participation of more than 200 people. The majority are from Cerdanya, and there are public and private sectors, and some of them are representative of civil society. The second campaign, it's the past year. We organize again several participatory workshops to give way to the strategic action plan. Due to the pandemic, the working days are virtual, not presential like the past year. The first workshop, we work on the basis of sociocracy with a new model of participatory governance to activate the past. We talk about a lot of people that we have to be more representative and more. There are the civil society have to be represented. In the second workshop, we are dedicated to talk about the sustainability and the conscious tourism, some regulations for the ecosocial impact to improve the conservation, restoration, and regeneration of all the spaces, natural, agriculture, cultural, and heritage. And the last one, we have worked the creation of season tourism products and the communication of these products, talking about sustainable quality and unique tourism model. Also around 200 people took part in this campaign, representing the different sectors, public, private, and civil society. And as a result of this participatory process, we have now the sectoral action plan with all the contributions and consensus of all participants. The purpose of this action plan is that the tourism sector with the local stakeholders, the public sector, private sector, and civil society have to work together for the sustainable development of La Cerdanya, guarding the cultural, natural, and human heritage and reinforcing the identity of the territory. And with this purpose, we have also 5 strategic lines. The first one is build a sustainable and conscious tourism model that becomes a benchmark. The second one is deseasonalize and diversify the tourist offer, sorry, and the third one, regulate the ecosocial impact of tourist activities. The fourth is promote communication and promotion of the new tourism model. And the last one, the five, is co-create and manage a participatory governance model. Nowadays, the next steps that are now, we are working to activate and implement this program. We made a regulation. We are reviewing the regulations that must ensure the proper functioning of the new governing body. We don't have examples. It's a new thing, a new body. It's we don't have examples to copy. We have a participatory governance. It's based by a circle of custody. There will be an equitable representation of the public sector, the private sector, and the civil society in the different areas, spheres. We talk about the different spheres. We have a political sphere, a technical sphere, and 5 spheres, each one for the different strategic lines. And also we're working with different actions from the plan to start implementing the new model of the participatory governance. Just by working together, we will achieve, we can make this change to a better model of tourism. And that's all. I don't know if you have some questions related to that.
Thank you, Maria.
Yes, I have to aquí. Stop share. Oh, okay.
I will introduce it now. Yes, okay. Thank you for showcasing your story with all this slow, long-term participatory process, which is what we always learn, that it's the way ahead and how we should all move forward and so on. So at least it's nice to see that that we have initiatives like this close by home, and that you are here now so that you can explain, and then we can learn a little bit more about that. So we have a couple of questions here. Maybe I have another question as well. Yes, thanks, Maria, for your presentation. Says these people from the audience, if you can explain a little bit more the concept of sociocracy and whether you have implemented it in your processes.
Okay, I understand as a sociocracy as a democratic process with all the society, and we have this governance body that have to help to do that. It will be more represented the civil society. There will be better represented in this governance body, council, or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But basically, also means that instead of using voting, you try to find some sort of a consensus.
Yes, we try. Yeah, we try to have consent always. Sometimes it's difficult, but we try to do it everything. Till now, we have all the process have been with consent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I also have a question, just linking this to the discussion we had before and the concept of holes, precisely. Yeah, so it looks like when you are involved and you are designing a participatory process, you need to have all the relevant stakeholders in, and all, which means we are thinking about wholes. Actually, tourism destinations self-define themselves by wholes, all surrounded. It's like a box surrounded with the skin of the box. Even though in your case, you have explained very clearly that you are traversed by so many administrative, international, provincial lines that managing tourism in such a destination, actually, it's a very special task and job, and we have talked about that other times and so on. But I would like to go back and really talk seriously about this issue, because this is, I think, it's not something that has been fully solved. Whether a process of participation actually requires having all the, let's say, people from the whole, or everyone has to be represented, or whether you have to move away, you have to move on forward with whoever actually have the natural drive just to add value, to collaborate, to join, to create community somehow. And also link it to this, in your particular case, you haven't talked about actually who is in and who is not in, but in my case, that I know more about the place, sometimes there are big players. I'm talking in your case, for example, some companies running like larger resorts, like ski resorts and things like that, which in a way are part of the community if you take it as a whole, but in a way are also more representative, let's call about the big capital, or well, whatever you want to call it. So how do you see all these different issues that I just mentioned? How did you deal with them, and what's the advice that you can give so that the process can be as regenerative as possible?
Yes. Well, but to have a representation of all the county and all the state, we have at the beginning we made some interviews, because not everybody wants to come to the participatory process, unless the big companies or the big resorts. But with interviews, we can talk directly to them. Then we have take all the opinions, and we write in this action plan. Then we try to make the groups with the governance that are representative also of all the county, all the territory, the north, the south, and east, west, the capital, and the small villages. And I think that if you talk about everybody and you ask the things, and they can talk, they are more involved in the process, and it's easily to make the work together then. And now we have the COVID, and it's difficult to talk about when we are in a online also in online meetings, but we make it also. We try to make all the process easily how we can.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. And so now we move to the very last stage. I propose just to use these questions just to close, and I see whether Bill and Kana and you want to share just quickly what you think about the new approaches that we will see in tourism because of the pandemic. So in the post-COVID-19 era, whether they will be regenerative or not. So if each of you can just give quickly your personal perspective, it will be welcome. So maybe Bill, you want to start?
Sure. I'm not sure I have a good answer, but because I think that if we isolate regenerative, if we actually make a silo about regenerative tourism, we're kind of missing the point. Regeneration is a worldview that it's a participatory co-evolutionary worldview that tourism can be an acupuncture point for. I think tourism is a logical group to engage in identity of place and meaning, right? And that's why tourists travel, I think, ultimately is meaning. I could be wrong about that. You are all more experts than I am in tourism. But I think I think I don't think the COVID. I think COVID is an awakening. It's not a permanent state. I wish it was a permanent state that would actually cause us to be reflective. But in a year or 2 years, we're likely it will dissipate. And so the question is, what COVID has become meaningful to us because it's changed our lives. The question is how do we actually help people reflect on what is meaningful to them in their lives and not go back onto automatic? And I think that's what COVID is allowing us to wake up to. The question is, will we continue that? And will regenerative tourism step in to fill meaning in lives? I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. And Kana, from your own perspective and situation.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't know if I have a very good answer for this question. It's difficult, especially since we're still living in COVID times. But as Bill said, if COVID has given us this space to be reflective on our personal meaning in day-to-day life, I think if that extends to travel, if people are also seeking that opportunity to reflect more deeply about what they want from a travel experience, and they want something that has more meaning, and I think a lot of people are seeking that, especially since they will emerge and be able to travel again. What kind of travel will they want to participate in? And if they are searching for that more meaningful, immersive travel, then I feel like that's something we can offer through our program.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Finally, Maria, from your point of view, from the perspective in La Cerdanya, how do you see this?
Yes, the answer becomes difficult, but like my colleagues, I think that the pandemic has made the change more necessary, and I think that the speed is more quickly now than before. We have to change now, not tomorrow, not the next month. It's a change that we have to make now.
Okay, so thank you so much. This brings us to the very end. I think in terms of timing, we are quite on time. As a closing remarks, just thank you very much, all of you, for attending the event, for this enlightening and inspiring session, for the panelists and all the people that have participated with their questions, very interesting questions, and very important. Special thanks to my colleagues, Ana Otero and Elena Solé here, for your excellent job in designing, preparing, and supporting this delivery of the webinar to all of us. Without your dedication, know-how, and enthusiasm, this would never have been possible. So thank you so much for that. And finally, also want to inform you that within this series of webinars, the next one is later today at 6 o'clock. This is the one about robotics for nature. And your attendance is most welcome. If you attend, we'll see you then. So this is all, and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.